Hi guys, so today's video is going to be going over the Witcher short stories that are likely to appear in the Witcher Netflix show. I thought this would be really helpful for anybody who is brand new to Witcher and is curious with just like an idea of what the show is going to have. And for those of you who have read the books, but maybe it's been a while and you like a refresher, this will hopefully provide that. If you are new to Witcher, I'm not going to be spoiling the resolution to these short stories. I'm just going to kind of let you know what transpires within them to give you an idea of the kinds of themes that are going to be there when you watch the show. You can compare and contrast what they do differently, what they add, what they take away. Because the show is pulling from both the collections of short stories, which would be The Last Wish and Sword of Destiny, I'm going to split this up into two videos and primarily focus on The Last Wish for today. The first season is going to be comprised of 8 episodes, and we have the episode titles as well as the descriptions for those. Are very brief. It's kind of like a little poem. Going in order, the very first episode is titled The End's Beginning, and the description is A Monster Slain, a Butcher Named. This is without a doubt referring to the lesser evil short story. It is one of the most quotable and notable short stories I find for the development of Geralt and also the introduction of Geralt, because he is a character that, of course, he grows throughout the series, but this is a very defining moment for him, not only in his presentation to the viewer, but also just getting to see how the society in their world views Witchers. If you're completely brand new, Witchers are generally young boys who were orphans and they had genetic mutations done to them to make them better equipped for fighting monsters. And they are kind of seen by a lot of society as monsters themselves because of the fact that they charge people to rid them of unspeakable evils. A lot of people feel like this should be something they do from the goodness of their hearts, but it's their profession and they gotta make some money. Geralt doesn't necessarily always do a ton to kind of lower that expectation of him, but in this short story at the beginning, he does. We see him seeing a monster that he's not been paid to take care of, but he decides to take care of it anyway, and then he goes into the nearby town to see if there's a reward he can collect. There isn't one, but the alderman of the town points him in the direction of the town's wizard, and it turns out this wizard is somebody Geralt knows. It's a man named Stregobor. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, but this individual ends up not really caring about the monster at all and has a proposition for Geralt in the form of defense and protection. Already at this point, you're going to see that Geralt has his own code of conduct. He really sticks to killing monsters and killing things that are deemed evil by basically everyone. He is not a hired assassin. He is not somebody's hitman. He's not a bodyguard. So he says no, despite the fact this wizard is insisting that a person is coming after him and he's in danger and he's completely innocent. He needs help, but Geralt refuses. When Geralt returns back to town, he finds the person that Stregobor said is coming after him, and then he gets this person's side of the story. This character is named Renfrey, and she tells Geralt of the fact that her whole life was absolutely miserable because of this wizard. He had some preconceived notions of what she would be like based on the day she was born. He has these superstitions, and he told everyone about them, and so her whole life people have viewed her a certain way. She has gone through so much, and she's basically looking for revenge. He tries to have a place of neutrality. He tries to stay out of things, but sometimes neutrality does not necessarily mean innocence, and this is a very good indication of where he's getting his reputation and how reputations often are not what they seem. The second episode is one that I believe the show is kind of putting in their own story. We're looking at likely the backstory of Yennefer based off of the description. The title of that episode is 4 Marks, and it says we look at a sorceress's early days. I'm pretty positive the sorceress we're looking at is Yennefer. There has been some information put out that we are going to be getting a more developed backstory for this character.
How much for this beast?
6.
4.
Sold. 4 marks.
She's one that in the short stories you don't know a ton about, other than that she has this tumultuous past and relationship with Geralt, but eventually later in the series you get to know more about her. But I think the show's goal with her and with the character Ciri is to develop them early on, and with Yennefer specifically is to create empathy for her pretty early. So there isn't really a short story likely that's going to coordinate with this one. We do know from the books, and the trailers made it pretty obvious, that Yennefer was not always the beautiful sorceress that she comes to be later. She used to be a hunchback, and it's looking like the show is going to be going into that in a lot more detail. The next episode's title is Betrayer Moon, and the description for this one says, a picky eater, a family shamed. And that would be The Witcher. It's the opening short story of the Last Wish collection of short stories. Similar to the opening season episode, this one starts off with Geralt fighting a monster. And we definitely see this in the trailers. He has to go down into this crypt, and this particular monster is one that a king wants taken care of, but he doesn't want this monster killed because he has some kind of relationship to this monster. It's very important to him that if Geralt is able to, that he restore this monster back to a human form. That said, episode 4 is one of the most obvious ones, especially in its title and its description. It is of banquets, and this one it says, the law of surprise is how one repays. The law of surprise in their world is basically somebody is indebted to someone else, and you can evoke this and say, I want the law of surprise to apply. I want whatever is waiting for you at home that you don't know is there. And this is often going to be an animal or a child. And so he ends up using the law of surprise to try and get the debt that is owed to him through the Queen Calanthe. The name of the short story in the books is A Question of Price. And the way things play out, Geralt is invited to this very fancy event that involves the Queen of Sintra and her daughter, Pavetta. Pavetta is being shown to all of these potential suitors, and there is some fighting that breaks out when somebody insists on Pavetta being his bride, and people get really upset because they don't feel like this person should have claim to Pavetta. Fighting breaks out. Turns out this person is kind of a monster, which you've probably seen in the trailers. It's one of the fight scenes that seems to be pushed a lot in the trailers. The outcome, though, like I've said at the beginning, I don't want to spoil exactly what happens, but it's a lot of fancy royal people getting in a bit of a scuffle, and then Geralt, of course, ends up having to intervene, as he often does despite not wanting to, and then eventually we come around to the law of surprise. The next episode, I believe, is going to be another really fun one, and it is called Bottled Appetites. The description is a fateful meeting, a bard is maimed. The bard that they're referring to would be Dandelion, who's basically Geralt's best friend, but they are polar opposites. Where Geralt is sort of grumpy and quiet and stoic, Dandelion is constantly talking. He's very artistic. He's kind of a wimp. Dandelion is often injured, and there's a chance that we could be seeing multiple short stories here. There is one that is the one that The Last Wish is named after. It's called The Last Wish. That particular short story wraps up that first collection of short stories. It's where we are introduced to Yennefer. In this short story, Dandelion loses his voice, which is a huge deal for him because he's a singer, songwriter, poet. So he absolutely needs his voice back. And Geralt, as he often is, he's pulled along by Dandelion being constantly in trouble in some way or another. And so he ends up being told that there is a sorceress nearby who can perhaps help him. All this came about because Geralt and Dandelion accidentally got into some stuff with a djinn, and so when he seeks Yennefer out, that information, she now kind of wants something with the djinn for herself. Like I said before, Dandelion does get hurt often, and there is another short story that it's possible they might even combine with this one, and they might show the meeting between Dandelion and Geralt, and then the meeting between Dandelion, Geralt, and Yennefer. This other short story is called The Edge of the World. It is, like I said, where the characters of Dandelion and Geralt first meet, and they end up, just through some ridiculous circumstances, kind of getting stuck in captivity by some elves. And this short story, it definitely shows the hilarity between Dandelion and Geralt, which I so am looking forward to. Just a little snippet we finally got of Dandelion in the last trailer has me so excited about their relationship.
Do not tell me that this is finally the moment you've decided to actually care about someone other than yourself.
Don't touch Roach.
But in this particular short story, we do get to see some of the adversity that the elves in the world face, as well as seeing how Dandelion is always such a wimp. And Geralt is always the one that thinks, oh, well, I guess we're gonna die now. And the two of them have this very interesting amount of luck and random things happening that kind of work in their favor. It's very entertaining. So I'm kind of curious to see if we're going to get all of that combined. The reason I think we're going to get a little bit of that short story as well is the fact that there are some characters that are listed on IMDb from that short story. So fingers crossed. Anyway, that is it for a little bit of a summary recap of the last Wish short stories that are likely to be in the show. I think the biggest challenge that Netflix probably had when doing this adaptation was trying to make it more linear than the format of the first collection of short stories, because there's a lot of good material there. But for a visual medium, it's going to be a little bit confusing if they don't find a way to tweak it and turn it around in a way that we are used to seeing in TV shows. But I think from what I've seen and the way they have the episodes laid out, I think they're gonna pull this off, and I personally am pumped. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.